Hey guys, it's Peter, PagerVay 2003 online, and I'm here to show you what I think so far of the Steam controller. I've been playing with this for about a day, and I've gotten a pretty good feel for it. It's a situational controller. It doesn't work with every game very well, or at least not better than a traditional controller like the DualShock 4, but in other games it works phenomenally, and I don't think I could go back to a different control scheme. Two trackpads instead of two joysticks. That's the main pull of it. This one also acts like a D-pad by default. Everything can be changed. On the back, we've got the grip keys, the grip buttons, and also there's a little switch on the bottom, and this entire grip panel doubles as the battery door cover. Boy, I'm bad at aiming with this. Alright, so, and that just clicks back on. It is both wired and wireless. There is the little receiver. It's got the, there we go, Steam logo on it. I'm a little surprised Valve didn't go with traditional Bluetooth. I don't know why they went with their own thing. It works really well. It connects almost instantly. So it's, I mean, it does what it's supposed to do. But yeah, will this replace a traditional controller? Probably not. But I'm definitely glad I have one, and I want to show you some games in different genres to explain why I like it, the problems I have with it, and let you decide whether or not you need to get one. Okay, so before we get into any games themselves, I wanted to show you the trackpads in action, since they are the really big pull. To do that, I am in Steam in big picture mode here. I'm just going to go to Google in the web browser, and the keyboard pops up, you know, like normal. But you can take your thumbs and use both trackpads at the same time to type, and then use the left trigger and the right trigger to enter commands. So, like, HELLO space WORLD. It's weird. I mean, I really don't know how else to put it. It's bizarre. Left scrolls, right moves the trackpad. Also, I don't know if you can hear that here. That little clicking, it kind of seems like it's a trackball. Like, it functions like a trackball. You can kind of flick everything around. And it seems like there's a wheel inside the controller that's moving. There's actually nothing moving. It is all really, really, really minute haptic feedback, vibration to make it kind of feel like it's moving inside when it really isn't. I really don't know how to describe this in words, so I apologize for that, but I mean, it's bizarre. Because, I mean, if I didn't know any better, if I weren't looking at the controller, if I didn't read how it worked, I would bet money that there's something moving inside here, like a wheel, because I swear I feel the wheel turning. I actually feel it moving, but it's not. There is no turning wheel. I mean, especially with the left side when I scroll, it's just insane. It feels so much like I'm actually spinning a mouse wheel, a really loose mouse wheel, and I'm not actually turning anything. I'm not spinning anything. There is just nothing there. So, yeah, it's very, very bizarre. It feels exactly the way it's supposed to feel, which is nice, but it's such a weird feeling. I just don't know how else to describe it. But, I mean, those are the trackpads. They're very accurate. They're very responsive, and you can mess with the responsiveness and the sensitivity and everything. But it's a very bizarre feeling to me. Alright, let's start with Super Meat Boy. And I wanted to start with this because this game requires twitch sensitivity, so it's really good to have a good controller with a good D-pad. I went into this thinking it was going to be absolute crap, but to my surprise, it is actually perfectly fine. I can play with the touch D-pad on this without any issues at all. Two different ways that you can use the pad to move. You can either lift your finger like that, you can hear the click, or you can just click and slide to move around. I prefer to just lift my fingers. It's a pretty wide area to move around, so it takes some getting used to, but it works. I was playing Shovel Knight, though, and that game requires you to press down in addition to another direction to move in the air to do a downward thrust, and I was having issues with that. But if it's just a left and right side-scrolling game, it seems like it'll work fine. Also, I'm using the trigger right here to run instead of walk. Normally I wouldn't use that. I would use the face buttons, but the face buttons are kind of out over here, and that's been a complaint. A lot of people have actually been complaining about how far out you have to reach. They don't bother me too much, but the trigger is definitely more comfortable. This is another good game to show you the controller configuration screen here in Steam. This is again in big picture mode. You can customize nearly everything. Nearly everything about this controller, and I really like that. One of the more interesting things is you can change the D-pad to not require a click to make it full touch controls. So now I don't have to click the pad down to move. The haptic feedback kind of helps, but it still doesn't feel nearly as good as actually clicking the whole thing down. So I prefer to just go in and set it to the gamepad template that Valve has built into everything. They have what is it? They have gamepad, keyboard, and kind of a hybrid, where this side over here, this is the gamepad, and then this is a mouse. It's really bizarre, but the next game I'm going to show you makes good use of that. But overall, as far as Super Meat Boy goes, again, color me shocked. It really, really, really does work. Like, you actually can use this as a traditional D-pad, and you shouldn't have many problems with it. So I'm surprised. I've got to give the, ironically enough, the D-pad part of this an A+, at least for this game. Alright, next up we have Borderlands 2. This is the game that really got me excited for this controller, this genre I should say. As you can tell, the joystick is obviously move, and then the right trackpad is to aim around. And this feels fantastic. Clicking the trackpad, I have set to melee, R3 basically. I don't like using the keyboard to play games because to me WASD is literally just a D-pad that requires 3 fingers to use. But I don't like using a right joystick to aim instead of the mouse, because it's not nearly as fast, it's not nearly as accurate. So before this controller came out, my solution was to use the PlayStation Move navigation controller in my left hand and a mouse in my right hand. This is obviously a lot easier to deal with. So yeah, it feels really accurate, it feels really fast, it feels like a mouse. I mean, it feels really nice. Now, another feature in this game, a good game to show off what the Steam controller can do, is notice right now I'm not fully pressing the trigger to fire. I'm only barely touching it. What you can do is you can go into the Steam settings, configure controller, go over to the trigger up here, and change soft pull to left trigger, and turn off analogs. And now what happens is if you soft pull the trigger, so just barely press it, it goes into iron sights. And if you pull it all the way, it fires. I haven't gotten the settings like all the way down. See, it seems to be jumping out. Actually, I think what you need to do is go in and, yeah, change this to hip fire. That's what you need to do. And now, yeah. See that? Also, see how I have to reload, which is the X button. This back thing is set to reload. So I can fire a bunch and just squeeze the controller handle. And it's really cool. I believe, yeah, the other controller handle is set to jump right now, so I don't even have to take my hands off the aiming thing to jump around. This game and other first-person shooters I've tried are really the reason this controller was made, in my opinion. It's just perfect. It's perfect, and I don't know if I will ever use any other control scheme to play first-person shooters again. I mean, it honestly feels that good. It is that accurate. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Another interesting thing about this. Oh, and this is using the hybrid one, by the way. Another interesting thing you can set up to test in this game is the motion controls. This actually does have motion controls. So I am going to set up the motion controls and mode shifting, not mode shifting, is it advanced? Advanced, where is it? Maybe it is mode shifting. No, that's not it. I cannot figure out... Oh, the gyro enable button. That's actually a glitch right there. There should actually be another menu right there. I'm going to change it to right pad touch. And what that means is that the motion controls will not do anything until I'm touching the right trackpad. So see, they do nothing now, but I set it so if I'm touching this, I can now move the controller around to aim. And it kind of feels like aiming with the DualShock 4 in a PS4 game. So it's, I mean, it's bizarre. It works, and you don't have to hold it in a certain direction. I can hold it like this, and now that's centered. So it's weird. I mean, it feels weird, but it's super accurate. And I mean, like I said, I genuinely do feel that this controller was made with first-person games in mind, because it is almost flawless with this, and it's so customizable that anybody can get it to work really, really well. So you can get it to work exactly the way you want it to work. It feels fantastic. Alright, so here's another first-person shooter. This is the Dying Light demo. To my surprise, when I first started this game and went to configure controller, it defaulted, or it recommended, just straight-up gamepad. And I thought that was weird because when it's set to gamepad, this right trackpad is actually set to emulate a stick. So if I hold this direction, it rotates forever as if I were rotating left on a stick. Same with right, same with up, same with down. So I was like, well, that's really weird. Why not have it be a hybrid? So I went over and I changed it to hybrid, and that's when I noticed why they didn't want you to do that. See how the aiming works just as well as it did in Borderlands? The movement works the same way as in Borderlands. It only does that individually. See, notice I'm moving the stick forward, but... oh, come on with this. I'm moving the stick... oh, come on with this. I'm moving the stick forward, but... and like kind of all around. You see, it's like really jittery, and I'm like stopping in my tracks. The reason it's doing this is because, see, I'm trying so hard to move. I'm actually holding the stick, and I'm not moving right now. The reason it's doing this is because this game does not play nicely with a controller and a keyboard and mouse combo at the same time. It keeps trying to switch between the control schemes, and it's confusing itself. And obviously Borderlands did not have that problem. Resident Evil Revelations 2 is another game that has this problem. So what you basically need to do is set everything to be keyboard and mouse. So now the joystick is set to WASD, and this is set to the mouse, and I can move and everything's fine. But the problem here is now that you have the joystick set to WASD, it acts like a D-pad and not a joystick. So now just barely pushing it makes you move full speed. But it's the only way to get it to work, you know, in harmony like this. So basically, it turns the Steam controller into a controller using XPadder or some kind of input mapper. And it works. It's not like you can't play the game like this, but you're losing that 360-degree movement that a joystick gives you. And it's a shame that there are games where the hybrid control scheme doesn't work the way it's intended to work like this, because it really does feel jankier. I mean, I would still much rather play this setting the controller to be the keyboard and then this to be the mouse. I still think it's worth that trade-off, but it's a shame that it doesn't give you the best of both worlds in this particular situation anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of games are like that. Alright, so let's try a fighting game, and I can barely get that out without laughing. This is Ultra Street Fighter 4. No. I mean, it looks like I'm doing okay now, but that's because I've been practicing a ton for this. I've been playing around with it a bit. it's not very responsive. I mean, the joystick works, but I also hate playing this game with controller joysticks like this. If I don't have an arcade stick, which I'm also not a huge fan of, I would rather just have a good D-pad. This is not a good D-pad for fighting games. It's not that great at all. I tried setting it so I didn't have to actually click the buttons, that I would only touch. That made it 10 times worse. I mean, I seem to be doing better now than I was yesterday, so maybe it just requires some, I see that? I just switched to the joystick without even meaning to. So maybe it just requires some practice. Look at this. I cannot do anything right now. Alright. Fighting games are not going to be played with the Steam controller much. This is kind of a lost cause to me. I mean, this works well enough, but I mean, I'm personally, like I said, I'm not a fan of using the stick. I don't think it's nearly as fast as it needs to be. If you can play with the stick, then I guess you'll be fine, but do not count on using the touchpad on this. It's not going to work at all. Alright, so here we have Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. This was kind of an experiment for me. I really didn't see the need to try the controller with this at first, but I wanted to try it anyway. As you can see, it defaults to gamepad, so the right trackpad acts like a joystick. I just have to hold it in a direction and it spins in that direction. But I tried to just change it to... Where am I? Change it to a hybrid one. And lo and behold, it works really well for this game. So I've got this over here, I've got my attacks over here as always, and yeah, it's actually not bad at all. I was kind of surprised with this, didn't really know what to expect, but I soon ran into a problem. If I go into my menu, now I can't rotate to look around me. I can click the stick and I can do that, so that's one way of doing it, but that's kind of cumbersome and it made me dizzy. So I found another feature of the mapping controls over here, and that is mode shifting. If you go to mode shifting, you can actually change the trackpad to a secondary kind of thing. So my primary one is the mouse, as you can see over there, and I'm going to change the secondary to be joystick move. Joystick move? Yeah, joystick move is fine. And change the output to the right joystick. I'm going to change the mode shift button to the right grip, and then exit out. So now, this acts like, unless it just, there we go. It acts like the mouse, same as it was before, but if I click the grip, if I squeeze the grip, which is also set to an item apparently, now it acts like a joystick. So now, when I'm in this menu, even though I can't move it like this, I can click the grip and I can move it around because now it's the secondary joystick instead of the trackpad. So you can assign two different things to basically every button, I think. Here, let me check. How about... Yeah, mode shifting on the Y button. You can do a secondary function on every single button on this controller, and that's pretty cool. I mean, I think just in my hand the DualShock 4 feels a bit more comfortable to play something like Dark Souls, but I could play this game from beginning to end without a single problem. And here, let me see. I didn't try this before. Let's try... Can I do a crosshairs with this? I can't even. It's been so long since I've played this. I'm trying... There we go. There's the crosshairs. And you can aim around like that. And that is much better than the right stick. So, yep, there you go. Yeah. So this feels good. It might actually be worth playing Dark Souls with this yet. I don't think I'll be doing it anytime soon unless I'm experimenting, but yeah, I was kind of surprised. I just tried this game on a whim, and lo and behold, it worked without a problem. So there you have that. Alright, so there you have it. Those are some different games with the Steam controller. Some worked really well, some were terrible. Overall, I like having the controller. I think it's really great. If nothing else, it's pretty innovative. We haven't really had anything like this. And I'm really excited to play around with it a bit more. Maybe it'll grow on me a bit more. One final thing I should note is that, to my knowledge, there is no way of actually getting this to work without Steam running. I'm running it in Windows right now. I've also tried it in Linux. At least in Windows, it is not even recognized by the system as being plugged in. It's not even seen as a controller. Yet the second I turned Steam on, even leaving it at the login window, not even logging into Steam, just having the program open made it so I could navigate my entire desktop with it. So that's a bit weird. So keep in mind that if you want to use this controller, you are going to have Steam running. Also, another final note, you can actually use this controller with non-Steam games, but you have to add them to your Steam library list using the client's game menu. But if you do want to use it with games that were bought on either GOG or the Humble Store or anywhere else, it is possible. You just have to have Steam running and have this added to the list while you do it. But yeah, it will work with pretty much anything. I don't know how much use you're going to get out of this right trackpad trying to run something like, say, a PS2 emulator or something like that, because it really is pretty bad when it emulates an actual stick. But, I mean, when you're playing something that uses a mouse and then you don't want to use a mouse and a keyboard, you want to just sit back and you want to use a controller, this works really well. This even works really well as a D-pad, except for in fighting games. It really didn't feel that great to me. So, should you buy one when it comes out to the public next month? That's the question here. Right now, I would still recommend a DualShock 4 or an Xbox One controller over this. And the reason I say that is because while a second stick may be more cumbersome than a mouse to aim, it does still work. It does its job. Whereas with this, and with the whole controller in general, while it can do some stuff really well, it outright can't do some other stuff, like be a good choice for fighting games. So you will actually have all the functionality in something like the DualShock 4, and with this, some games you just will not even want to touch. So I would still recommend a more traditional controller right now, but the Steam controller does have firmware updates. It will be getting support for a long time. It will be updated pretty often, I would assume anyway. And it's fun to play around with. If you're looking for a controller to play around with, and if you primarily play first-person shooters, then yeah, give it a shot. But for right now, I would honestly just stick with a traditional controller until maybe they add some more features, some more control options, which seems like a lot to ask since it's so customizable already, but it's hard to explain without actually getting one in your hands. It's a great controller. I'm glad I got one, but it definitely will not be replacing the DualShock 4 for me. Anyway, that's all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Anyway, other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.